The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the book club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood and I am very, very excited for today's show because we have a wonderful guest and an amazing book. So I'm going to dive straight in and basically introduce the wonderful book to you. It is called Ramadan Reflections, a guided journal, and it has been written by Aliyah Raiyaan, and I received the book and I've taken so much benefit from it. I think it's going to provide a guiding light for any reader during Ramadan, inshallah, and outside of Ramadan too. The blurb at the back says that it is a must-have intimate journal to guide you through Ramadan and deepen your individual connection to Allah for the year ahead. With inspiring reflections, practical exercises, powerful quotes, and drawing from the spiritual wisdom of the Holy Quran and Sunnah, it offers an invitation to let your heart ponder, to immerse yourself in dua, and to journal about spiritual themes and subjects. It is a journey within a journey, a space for transformation. This journal is a path with and for the most merciful. So that is a beautiful introduction to the book. And I am really delighted to have Aliyah Raiyaan on the guest on the book club show today. So as an introduction, Aliyah Raiyaan converted to Islam 23 years ago and has been involved in UK Dawah for over 20 years. In 2010, she founded Solace UK, a charity that helps women who have converted to Islam and find themselves in difficulty. In 2019, she launched a YouTube channel called Honest Tea Talk, which brought unscripted conversations to the table about raw, unspoken topics related to the Muslim community. She continues to devote her time to helping women achieve their full potential, whilst emphasizing the importance of developing a personal and close relationship with Allah. She was recently approached by the publisher Penguin to write and publish a book. The book, Ramadan Reflections, which has now been written, is available, and I hope you are all able to grab your copy, and it will help you, inshallah, through the days of Ramadan. And I'm going to now say Assalamu alaikum to Aliyah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm so well. Thank you so much for joining us on the book club show today. So obviously I've just given a little bit of background obviously to yourself, to the book, and I thought a really lovely place to start would be to give our listeners a little bit of an idea of what inspired you to write the book, and also the journey to kind of where we are now with it.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. Jazakallah khair. It's lovely to be here and speak with you, Imrana, mashallah. Okay, so I need to tell you a little bit of a story because there is a very beautiful story behind this book. And I've been asked this question a number of times in the last couple of weeks since the book has been published, you know, what inspired me. And I didn't actually have a particular inspiration, or there wasn't anything that inspired me, but there was something quite profound that led to this book going out into the world, alhamdulillah. So for many years I've been making dua that Allah would bless me with the opportunity of writing and publishing a book before I die, and it's been a dua that I've been making for many years. And in Ramadan 2022, out of all of the things that I was asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, this dua, despite the fact that I had been making it for a very long time, was just at the forefront of my mind and was just on my heart. And like I said, there were other things, you know, I would say possibly, you know, even more important things that I was asking Allah for. But this one, it was just there, you know, on my heart. And I just kept repeating it again and again and again. Ramadan ended, and 2 months later, I found myself just checking my messages on Instagram. And it's interesting because my writing, kind of sharing my written reflections on social media, has been has been going on for a couple of years, but at that particular time, mid 2022, I was actually quite quiet on social media. Messages had been piling up, I wasn't responding as quickly as I normally do. I checked my request folder on Instagram, and there was a message from a woman, and she had a non-Muslim name. Now, obviously, as a revert myself, I thought she's either a revert wanting to ask me something or wanting to share something with me, or she isn't Muslim and she has some questions about Islam. So I opened the message and I read her message. It was a very short message, and I instantly thought it was a scam.
Right. Yeah.
And normally I get these types of messages quite regularly, Normally I wouldn't even, how you can read the message but not accept. So you've read it, but they don't know that you've read it. Normally I wouldn't even click on accept. I would just, close it and move on.
Yeah.
But subhanAllah, and I'm glad that I didn't do that this time, because I pressed accept. And then I also responded and I said, sounds interesting. Can you email me? And I provided her with my email address. Right. And she emailed me pretty straight away. And I checked the email address, and I thought that it would kind of be some, at Gmail, at hotmail.co.uk.
Some numbers.
Yeah. And then subhanAllah, it was a company email address, and my heart kind of stopped. Yeah. So the message that she had sent me on Instagram was, I'm a publisher from Penguin Random House, and we were wondering if you would be interested in writing a book for us.
Wow. Oh, mashallah, yeah.
SubhanAllah. And so, we had our first meeting, and in this meeting, I obviously had so many questions for her. And I asked her, how did you find me? What do you want from me? Who do you want me to write for? What do you want the book to be about? Like, what is this all about? I had 1,001 questions. And then she said to me, we have like these tools, these listening tools on social media, and we came across you, and I came across, some of the things that you had written on social media, and I went to other writers, and something kept bringing me, drawing me back to you. And then I would leave your grid again, and I would go to other writers, but something kept drawing me back to you. And then, here we are, kind of thing. And she said, we would like you to write a book that will go out for Ramadan. And we would like the book to be connected to Ramadan somehow. And when she said this, and we want it to be for the Muslim audience. And when she said this, I just thought, subhanAllah. I said to her, 2 months ago, in the month of Ramadan, I was praying to my creator to bless me with the opportunity of writing a book. And publishing a book before I die. And here you are, and this was in Ramadan, here you are telling me you would like me to write a book for the following Ramadan, connected to Ramadan. And she was kind of like, ooh, this is kind of like, this is a bit, a bit strange, a bit spooky. But for me, I just thought, Ya Rabbi, how kind you are, how you answer the dua of your servants in a way that they could never have imagined. And I just thought, my Lord listens, and he responds at the most perfect time and in the most perfect way. So this is the journey of the book. This is how the book came about, and I am honored and humbled. That's the story.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. Like, I'm getting goosebumps listening to you, because like, subhanAllah, it's, what you said about, the timing and, Allah answering du'as, it's so important. And when it manifests in this kind of way, when you, I guess, in some ways least expecting it, and, that it's that reminder, that, Allah is near. And thank you so much, for telling us about, the journey behind the book. So then if we come to, obviously, the book itself, Ramadan Reflections, obviously it's an interesting format in the sense that it's not obviously, I don't want to say just a book, but of course it's a book, but because it's a journal and it invites a reader to not only kind of delve into some of the reflections that obviously you're sharing, but also to pause and reflect on themselves and have the opportunity to write. And I think that's, a really lovely way, I guess, to engage in Ramadan, because sometimes I know we're not always sure what our Ramadan's going to look like, or we make intentions, and so sometimes maybe you need that kind of focus. But could you just share a little bit about that? So why the idea of like a journal specifically? Is that something you do yourself? And what kind of benefit would the readers get from that?
Well, if I'm totally honest, when I did have that initial meeting with the Penguin team, the publisher, she did say that we would like it to be kind of reflection based. We would like it to be a journal. So she was very specific, and then the rest was up to me. And I think initially she kind of had in mind very short reflections, with some journal space, but it became so much more than that. It's kind of part memoir. It's deeply reflective. There's a lot of my writing in it, and then there's journal space at the end of each chapter. But I do think journaling is therapeutic. I think we hold so much in our heads, and just kind of emptying ourselves out through writing is very healing, and quite liberating. And I guess maybe I haven't journaled in the traditional sense, but obviously for the last few years prior to writing this book, I have been sharing my reflections on social media a lot. And that was because, I was kind of going through some very difficult times, and I found that just writing, not necessarily about the ins and outs of those difficulties, but just writing my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions out and sharing it was extremely therapeutic. So I guess I do believe in journaling, but I just did it in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah, no, and it's such an important actually point that you're making. It's true, because I mean we define things differently, and you're right, everything that you share, kind of online, yes, of course, in essence that's what it is. And I guess there's a degree of I guess kind of vulnerability in that. And I think if you're able to be vulnerable and kind of create that space, which I think you've done, wonderfully, is really amazing. So in terms of obviously more specifics of Ramadan reflections itself, very early on, there's a quote which I'm just going to share, and just wanted your kind of input into that. Is so you say that I invite you to turn inwards, focus on your heart and the awakening you feel inside of you right now. So I read that and I was like, oh, kind of really like clutch my own heart. I was like, yeah, it was really powerful kind of statement. But I guess the other thing I thought was, though, in a time where obviously we have like lots of distractions. I mean, obviously there's positives to it as well in terms of social media and whatever the streaming platforms that they might be on, but in terms of being able to do that and focus on our heart, what is it you think we can do to be more present in those quiet moments?
How can we be more present?
Yeah, because obviously we're kind of surrounded by, I guess, different distractions.
Yeah.
So how do we make that time and then just be really present in that?
I think we have to schedule it in. Now, it's interesting because Ramadan is a time where we do things differently the rest of the year. Ramadan is a time where we're actually forced to slow down to a certain extent. Our energy is depleted, we are slower. We change things up in the course of our days and nights. And, I kind of look upon Ramadan and I think, subhanAllah, Allah's wisdom in granting us a month of 29 to 30 days where we have to, this is obviously one of our 5 pillars, we have to slow down. And I wonder, is it from the wisdom of Allah that he knows obviously he knows the human condition, but he knows that we can't continue in, this rat race And we need the month of Ramadan to slow down, reconnect, recharge spiritually. And I think, on that point, we then, outside of Ramadan, need to consciously schedule in moments of pause, moments where we slow down, take stock, allow our hearts to reconnect with our purpose and our creator. Because otherwise, quite simply, we will burn out spiritually. And I think, possibly the wisdom of Ramadan is that, we kind of take heed of the fact that we're always on autopilot, and we need to take regular time out to look inwards in order to be able to look upwards towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yeah.
No, I love that. Yeah, to kind of look inwards, to look upwards is, yeah, absolutely. And I think again what you said about scheduling it in, because I think sometimes we need something a bit like that tangible time, or something where we really are, like you said, coming out of that rat race, which obviously is so easy to kind of fall into. Now, you kind of continue on to the next chapter, which is on responsibility. And another thing that kind of stood out to me is, there's a quote where you say, "I made a choice to take full responsibility for all of my choices, both good and bad, and to look back and take all the lessons necessary." So again, I was reading that and I was thinking, of course, like we all to an extent understand responsibility, accountability, but also the idea that if we're really thinking about that quite deeply, it requires a certain level of bravery almost, I think, for where, I guess from what I think. But how do you think we can empower ourselves to kind of trust those choices that we're making? Because sometimes we're just kind of going through the motions. But yeah, is there anything that you can kind of share about that?
Well, I think in terms of trusting the decisions that we take, this can only be done, in my opinion, when consulting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we may feel that a decision is a good one, but we don't know our future, whereas he does. So, I think trusting the choices and decisions we make must be coupled with, is the istikhara prayer, the seeking guidance prayer. It must be coupled with dua, asking Allah, who knows our future, who even knows our past, whereas, we've forgotten elements of our past. He knows our condition. He knows why we are who we are today as a result of our past, and he knows what is to come. So I think the trust that we have in the decisions and choices we make kind of comes from that trust of, I've taken this to my Lord, and I believe he's going to guide me to what's best, and that's what you trust in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. No, absolutely. I think, again, it's a reminder, isn't it, as well, that we don't want to lose, sight of the ultimate kind of purpose, and obviously our relationship with Allah, absolutely. And even, for example, the little, I'm going to call it a subtitle, or on the book, obviously it says 30 days of healing from the past, journeying with presence and looking ahead to an akhirah focused future. So what is it, I guess, that I think your book's laid out really interestingly, because obviously there's three parts to the book itself. The first is healing and taking lessons from the past, then journeying to Allah with presence, and then obviously planning and moving into an akhirah focused future. How did you come about, I guess, creating those three sections of the book? So before you started writing, was there a certain way that you knew you wanted the book to kind of be, or I was just interested in that?
Yeah. If I'm honest, after that meeting with the publisher, all I knew that it needed to be reflection based, which is how I pretty much write anyway, and to have a journal element to it. And then I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea what I was gonna present. What type of skeleton I was gonna present, and I took myself to a park in East London, because I needed to be inspired, and I often find that I'm inspired when I look upon Allah's creation, and just to see beauty. So I took myself to an East London park. I didn't have, unfortunately, I didn't have the time to, venture outside of London to Yorkshire or somewhere like that. So I went to an East London park, and I sat on a park bench in front of a lake. It was actually Victoria Park in East London. And I just spoke to my Lord, and I just said, "Ya Allah, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't even know what to do, but I know that this came from you, and I know that this is most certainly for you. So just guide me and guide my pen, guide me to put out into the world that which will bring hearts and souls back to you. I don't know how to do this without you." And then I said, Bismillah, and I began to brainstorm. And I started with the fact that Ramadan is 29 to 30 days. So I thought, okay, 29 to 30 chapters, one for each day. And then obviously 30 days, okay, 3 parts. And then it was like past, present, future, because this is, we're constantly in between, one of 3 states. We're either trying to deal with something from our past. We're definitely currently dealing with, our current circumstances, or we're asking Allah, for something, or we're hoping for something in the future. So this is the journey of life, right? And then it kind of just developed from there. So that's kind of how the book came about.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful way of kind of doing it. It's kind of categorized, but also in a way which is, it's just obviously, of course, it resonates, right? And the way, it links into then Ramadan and those kind of thirds, is amazing. And I don't want to kind of put you on the spot a bit, but so basically the next chapter that you use, chapter 3, which is called day 3, obviously because it's according to the days of Ramadan, is love. I was going to ask you, how would you define love? And the second part of that question is, and what do you think is the best way to practice the love of Allah?
How do I define love in terms of our relationship with Allah, or just love in general?
Could you do both? I'm just interested because I really like the chapter on love in the book. So I was just wondering. But I'm not gonna. But I don't want to make it difficult. So whatever, you're open to answering on that.
Well, I don't think. First of all, I don't think there is one definition of love. I think it is subjective. And so love is open, and love will take on a different meaning for each person. But I think love is this this yearning in your heart to be next to the one you love. It's a yearning in your heart to do everything you can to make that person happy. That person has taken up a space in your heart, and you kind of feel a sense of pain when you are separated from them, I think love is very wholesome. It's healthy, or rather it should be. And it's a state that is satisfying, fulfilling, and just brings joy and contentment. So I think for me that's love. And in terms of what was your second question?
I guess then focusing on our love of Allah and that kind of, I guess,
I think in terms of the love of Allah, it again just on on what I've just mentioned, it's a focus. There's a focus to Allah is at the center of your life. He is at the center of your focus. He is your priority. The love that the servant has for his or her Lord produces this constant awareness. So he, Azza wa Jal, is always kind of on your mind and on your heart, and you kind of navigate through this life wanting to please him, wanting him to have you as his beloved.
Mm.
You're, you're in dialogue with him because you want to always be in the company of your loved one, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to displease him because you don't want your loved one to ever see, that side of you. You want your loved one to always think well of you. There's this drive and this urgency to do all that will please, will please him as well. I think this is love for me. It's
Yeah.
kind
Mhm.
of placing yourself in a position where you do everything you can to love him and be loved by him and to protect yourself from ever losing that love.
Mm.
Yeah, that's love for me. Love of Allah for me.
And I love the way that you've encapsulated that. Thank you so much. So we are headed to the break, and in the second half of the show, we'll discuss a little bit more with Aliyah Raiyaan about her book Ramadan Reflections. So we'll be back in a moment. Assalamu alaikum.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Book Club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood, and on today's show I have the privilege of interviewing Aliyah Raiyaan, who is the author of the recently published Ramadan Reflections, a guided journal, 30 days of healing from the past, journeying with presence and looking ahead to an akhirah focused future. In the first half of the show, we were talking to Aliyah a little bit about her journey behind the book, a little bit about some of the, I guess, reflections, of course, that Aliyah has in terms of social media and how we need to find quiet times and pause and reflect. The idea of taking responsibility for our choices, but ultimately that they need to be obviously have Allah at the center of them. And then just before the break, we were talking to Aliyah a little bit about what she thinks love is and how we're able to not necessarily define that, but also the fact that love is subjective and it can mean different things to different people depending on the context. But ultimately, again, coming back to something that Aliyah said, I think earlier on in the first half of the show, that it's important that we're able to look inwards to our own selves so then we can look upwards to Allah. So that show is definitely about making Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our focus and our center. So hopefully the show will give you really lots of benefit this Ramadan. So we're going to delve straight back in to the book, and chapter 5. Ali, you talk about your experience as a new revert to Islam. You mentioned that you were obviously attending a Jummah prayer, and you kind of felt that there was a lot of focus being put on this idea of kind of propagating fear, where there was things about what is haram and lots of advice which was almost presented a bit harshly, I guess, to specifically to women. Now that obviously that was quite an early maybe experience for you, my question is, how do you think things have changed? Have things changed for women in particular, I guess, going to the mosque, or even just generally in terms of the advice they receive or the guidance that they're getting? So yeah, I just wanted your reflections on that.
I think it's very much a work in progress, if I'm honest.
Mm.
Certainly has progressed since I became Muslim in 1999. There's so much more out there for women. Women are, I would say, subhanallah, in many ways at the forefront of the dawah, which is amazing. Mashallah.
Mm.
I do still feel, as a community, we, particularly in the UK, we have a long way to go. Gosh, there's kind of so much I could say about this topic.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
trying to to just focus on the main points, but I think certainly in kind of major cities, the main cities in the UK, there is a lot of provision for sisters. The mosques are welcoming. women. They provide classes. So that's good. I think in the kind of less populated areas around the country, it's still very, very sadly an issue. Women are not welcome in the mosque. We've, at Solace, the charity that I'm CEO of, we've had revert sisters who have become Muslim, and then, knock on the door of their local masjid and have had, the door kind of slammed in their face. No, 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 women are not allowed here. So I think in certain areas, there needs to be a level of awareness created. Because unfortunately it feels like we're still stuck in the 90s, so I think it very much depends on the geographical location. And obviously I'm referencing the UK here, but I think that we definitely have progressed. There is so much provision out there for women and led by women, which is amazing as well, mashallah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess maybe that's sometimes where the change, it is happening because of that very reason, that women are starting to be at the forefront of those conversations and kind of taking up space, which they have 100%, I guess, right to. But yeah, I mean, what you said about work in progress, yeah, I guess, it's that's what it is. And yeah, inshallah, it can kind of continue improving. So the book then goes on to, different elements, I guess, for each day. So obviously we've kind of touched on love and gratitude. There was one of the chapters. It then goes on to also repentance, and I think the next one might be forgiveness, if I'm right. I know I might have got that mixed up, but there was one question that, again, it's a quote that you mention in the book, which is that you talk about, forgiveness as a form of training. And I thought that was really interesting, because sometimes we don't think about, I mean, I personally don't think, I guess, or I never thought about it in that way. But so why do you think Ramadan might be a good time to actually practice this, process of forgiveness? Because if it is, a form of training, like you say.
Well, I think Ramadan softens the heart. And in order to be able to forgive, our hearts need to be softened. When someone has hurt us and done us wrong, automatically our hearts become hardened towards that person, and even towards life itself, depending on, the level of hurt that's been inflicted upon the individual. So I think Ramadan softens our heart. It refocuses the soul on its purpose. And as a result of that, the hurt and pain that we've experienced at the hands of others is kind of placed within the correct frame, that we're here on a temporary journey. We're all imperfect. We have a greater goal, and that is to, be loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to journey to our permanent home. And so by placing the hurt caused by others within that frame, we are, we're able to make better decisions as to how we kind of navigate through that trauma or pain. And as I said, Ramadan is a month where we do things differently, where we focus more on our purpose, we focus more on our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's like the prime time to place people and the wrong they've done to us, like I said, within that frame.
Yeah, and I think, that softening of the heart, absolutely. And it's amazing how it's almost, I don't know whether I should say automatic, but there's something about the coming of Ramadan, that suddenly something does really settle, and everything feels, in that way. What's that? Sorry?
I said it feels different, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It does. And I think, explain that really, really well. And then you kind of go on to then talk a little bit in the next chapter, which is kind of focusing on Qadr, which is interesting because I know just before the interview we were kind of speaking about that because of a particular reason. But I guess, when there's so much emphasis that we need to be in control of our lives, the messaging we're getting, whether it's work or, it could be, a multitude of things. What do you think we need to do then to kind of let go of that illusion of control? Because obviously we know ultimately it's in Allah's hands. But yeah, what is that way of kind of submitting to the qadr of Allah? Like what do we need to do or say to ourselves or remind ourselves of?
Well, it's acknowledging that we are not in control of anything.
Mm.
We are not. Ultimately, and even the decisions and choices we make fall under the decree and will of Allah. We are only able to breathe by His will. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided that we would breathe our last breath, there is nothing that we can do except to breathe our last breath. And so I think the first step is the understanding that we are only existing by His will. We are only able to do by His will. That everything was decreed for us when we were in the wombs of our mothers. And so whilst I can, yes, make the decision to pick up the book, it's only by His will that I'm able to do so. And I think understanding that Allah has a plan for us, and that that everything that happens to us is with its purpose and is, for the best of us. It just changes the way that we interact with life. When things are given to us, we're very quick to be able to submit to that, right? Because it's a positive thing. But also when things are taken away from us or things don't go to plan, then it should also produce that feeling of alhamdulillah, because we know that Allah has the best plan for us, that He is al-Wakil, He is the best disposed of our affairs. So I think it's very much a matter of the heart, the internalization of the fact that we are servant and He is master, and He has already written everything that will occur in our life, and we have dua that can obviously change qadr, but ultimately we have a Lord who not only has decreed what will happen in our life, but He is a Lord who is merciful and kind and generous and wants us to be admitted into His gardens of delight, His paradise. So I think, with that in mind and understanding that the plan comes from a merciful creator, a loving creator, then we accept the good, the bad, and sometimes the even ugly is part and parcel of a beautiful plan for us.
Yeah, and I think that's when, it's so important, I guess, to reflect on the attributes of Allah as well, in order to remind ourselves of the fact that, of course, that He's our creator, He's loving, as you said, and obviously what you said about the fact that ultimately our qadr is written, while we're still in the wombs of our mothers, and actually how powerful it is when you really think about it. And sometimes, I guess, even personally, sometimes I might be overthinking stuff, or there's, I'm anxious about something, but yeah, I mean, that's what it is, isn't it? It's the fact that we are in control, and we really ultimately need to. I mean, that is what it means to submit to Allah, isn't it? Is really, true submission is really letting go, as scary and hard as it can be. But it's important to do that. I mean, that takes me on to my next question, which was chapter, or day 9, I should call it, which was looking at being tested. And again, it was so. It had a slight awakening, I guess, reading this chapter, because it was in a recent interview with somebody, and we were talking about, obviously, the miracle of the Quran, the fact that you could read a verse, hundreds of times potentially, and then suddenly one day it kind of almost takes on a different meaning depending on, where you're at. And you write something similar, obviously, in the day 9 chapter. And it's looking at the Surah Baqarah, which is, or did you expect to enter the garden of paradise before the like of the trials that befell those who passed on before you had befallen you? Misery and adversity afflicted them, and they were shaken as with an earthquake, until the messenger and those who believed with him would say, when is Allah's support coming? Undoubtedly, Allah's support is indeed near. So you then go on to look at the words zulzilu, and which is obviously translated as shaken, and also zilzala, which is meaning earthquake, which is mentioned in that kind of ayah of the Quran. I mean, that was just, I don't know why, but I hadn't made the connection, I guess, in my own mind, because of course I've read it so many times. I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. But it's the way you've kind of explained it. And I guess my question is, what's kind of really important for believers to understand, that actually being shaken by the tests that we sometimes experience, that they're not obviously a sign of weakness, and how do we remind ourselves of that every time we're kind of shaken with something?
Yeah, I think it comes back down to something that I mentioned quite a number of times in the book, and that is that we are believers, but we're also human. And subhanallah, Allah is the one who created us and created us in our, in our imperfect state. And so we cannot not be human, we will be shaken. We will some days feel weak, some days we'll feel strong, but we will be shaken. And had this not been something important for us to go through, then Allah wouldn't have created us in such a way. Being shaken is not a sign of weakness, it's just a sign of being human. And really what this dunya is it's an imperfect journey where we as imperfect beings are trying to navigate that imperfect journey on our way to become beloved to the one who is perfect and who has created a perfect permanent home for us. And so, with that in mind, it's a delicate journey of being so human, with the quest to strive and aspire to become better, in our belief and the manifestation of that belief. But it's an acceptance of the two. It's an acceptance, we accept that we want to become better Muslims, we want to become better believers. Accept that I'm imperfect, I'm flawed. And my Lord knows this. My Lord has created me as this. And I take those imperfections to him and I just do the best that I can. And I think that's all that Allah requires from us. He doesn't require us to kind of, live on cloud nine and be perfect. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said, if there were a people that ceased to sin, I would replace them with a people that did sin so that I can forgive them because I love to forgive. Subhanallah. So Allah shows us that, he loves that we bring our imperfect selves to him in such a humble way, and he loves to turn to us in that state with his forgiveness. So it's okay to feel weak, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay that we sin, and we will continue to do so, but it's what we do with that in terms of our relationship with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that focus again, coming back to that relationship, with Allah, and that's obviously the beauty of the book, because each chapter, each day, there's that reminder to come back and to come back again, and to refocus and recenter. And I think that's another kind of really lovely thing about the book, because it's because it has that journal obviously format to it. It's day by day, and it's something that readers, if you get a copy of the book and you're able to focus on one particular chapter, one particular day, which each one has its different, reminder and theme. And the next one was kind of a little bit further down. So this is kind of looking at, day 13, where you talk about ihsan, and you give a really lovely experience of something that you and your husband experienced at the time of iftar, and how I guess it kind of reminded you on what ihsan, I guess, really means. But what was really interesting is in that chapter you talk a little bit about that obviously relationship between taqwa and ihsan, but also you mentioned the idea of obviously being Muslim, but then also there's the idea of a mu'min. So I thought it'd be really good maybe for our listeners for you to kind of maybe explain, like kind of elaborate a little bit more on that. Like, what do you think that journey is like to obviously being a Muslim, but then in essence kind of becoming a mu'min?
Yeah, so I think my understanding, based on what I have learned, and obviously I'm not a scholar, so this is obviously just my understanding, is that a Muslim is one who submits through action, and then a mu'min is one who combines their action with their belief, right? So it's they're not just simply submitting in action, but they're submitting in heart, and soul. So the actions are combined with intention and sincerity and humility and so on. And then the muhsin is the one who obviously offers, worship of action and belief, and heart and presence, but aims to do so with the beautiful aim of worshipping Allah as though they see them, and knowing that though they cannot see Allah, they walk through this life knowing that Allah sees them. And so there's this element of being watched by the Most Merciful as they go through life, and so their deeds are their good deeds are committed, with this sense of Allah is watching me right now. How do I want to offer this deed for His sake? How do I want to present myself to the King of Kings? And so it just takes that servant of Allah up a notch, in which they want to, because they know that they're being watched, and they navigate, they walk through this life as though they see Allah. Their deeds are offered in the best possible way, in an excellent manner. And that's ihsan. That is ihsan, and that's the difference. And I think it's not a case that we kind of we're Muslim and then we become a mu'min and then we become a muhsin. Yeah. We fluctuate between all three states, but the aspiration and the goal should be that we go through this life aiming to worship Allah as though we see Him, as though He is there right in front of us, but knowing that He is always watching us intimately and attentively. And this just completely transforms the heart and actions of the believer.
Yeah, and I guess what you're saying there about intimacy and that attentiveness, absolutely. It's so, good to, again, just remind ourselves of that, in terms of our, relationship with Allah. And I guess is also something, obviously the book goes on to talk about different aspects. So you've got like a chapter which is called Life Audit. In the third kind of part of the book, which is planning and moving into an akhirah-focused future, you look at tawakkul and dua and patience. And again, there was one quote that was really I also loved, which is hope brings sweetness to this dunya, and it's such a lovely I think benefit to take from the book itself. And I almost think for me that really stood out, and I'm thinking in terms of my intentions, just not just for Ramadan, but I just generally for life. There's so much power in hope, and it can be a transformative power as well. And just to end, because we've got just a minute or two left, I wanted to ask you, in terms of our listeners, how can they follow your work? How, if they don't already have the book, which you should have, by the way, but if you don't already have it, how they're able to get a hold of a copy? And just kind of keep in touch.
Yeah. So I'm on social media, most platforms. Just search Aliyah Raiyaan. And I have a website, aliyahraiyaan.com. And the book is available on Amazon, Waterstones, WH Smith, Foyles, Book Depository, pretty much all the kind of main retailers. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most kind, most generous. The book was also published in America. So it's available, it's available on Amazon.com and Barnes and Noble and kind of like all their main retailers there. And Book Depository, it means that you get free delivery internationally as well. So, and it's available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. And I'm so grateful to Allah that I was able to read the book for the audiobook version. So you hear my voice reading my own words, which is really, really, really a very humbling experience, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I was just thinking actually that would be such a treat. You know, it's one thing reading your words, but then hearing the voice also, it's a completely different, brings a different dynamic into it. That's wonderful. So are there any kind of final words that you'd like, to kind of share with the listeners just to end on, just like a 30-second?
I think, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the introduction, but I would encourage, obviously I'm biased, but you could go and have a look at the reviews on Amazon to see what people have thought about the book. But if you do read the book, and I recommend that you do, before you start reading, I recommend and invite you to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to soften your heart, to open your heart to that within the book which will draw you closer to him. And I really believe that if you make that dua with complete sincerity, that he will bring you what you need, from this book. So, I think that would be my final message.
Thank you, Jazakallah. I want to say like 100 Ameens to that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for writing this wonderful, beautiful book. And, inshallah, our listeners will get a lot of benefit from it. And I've absolutely for that dua as well. So that was, we were talking to Aliyah Raiyaan about her book, Ramadan Reflections. So I hope you have had time to reflect and pause and take lots on. But of course, in the meantime, until the next show, please do keep us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at InspireFM Luton.